Hey everyone, my name is Stefan, and I can't, I can't do it. I can't get through that without laughing. Like we are, our economy sucks. Like some of you who said, oh well, Biden made our economy suck. Well, Trump is making it fucking worse. Like our economy is in shambles right now. This man has started a trade war with the biggest importer to America. Like most of the stuff that you have, like remotes, TVs, Apple headphones, Apple phones are all made in China because it's just cheaper to make it in other countries that, yes, they do have different regulations than they do and all that other stuff. But making it here in America would cost either two times or even triple the amount because we didn't start making it here. We just had other countries make it. And so China has decided, that, okay, we don't need America, right? China doesn't necessarily need America. America just buys a lot of goods. So now China's like, well, we'll find someone else who wants to buy our products and probably make some products too. But that's besides, our economy is in shambles. And for all of you who voted for him, I hope you're losing money in your 401k. And normally I'm not mean like that, but I truly hope that you have a 401k and you lost money because you deserve this. We literally told you from day one, this is what this man is going to do. And you guys are like, no, like he's just saying that because he doesn't know. He knows he just crashed our market. And every single time he talks about tariffs, it just makes the market more unstable. I would say, I will say this, that if you are into buying stocks, this is probably the perfect time to buy stocks. I was telling my best friend this a couple weeks ago. I was like, especially when the market really did go down, I was like, this is the perfect time for you to buy stocks because they're really dirt cheap, right? So it's a double-edged sword. Yes, he crashed our entire market, and our markets are going to be down for a while, especially with tariffs and the trade war. And then here's the other thing: he puts these like 90-day pauses on it, and it's like I seriously think he's one of those old people who doesn't know what the fuck he's really doing. Like he's crashing markets. Our egg prices still hasn't increased. Our gas prices hasn't increased, and I just believe it's only going to go downhill from here. And we're not even a full year into his term. And now putting all these tariffs on all these other countries is really going to hurt global trade market at the end of the day. But at the end of it, we're here to talk about something called a pink tariff. Did you guys know that women's clothing is taxed higher than men? Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about this war with Harvard because, ever since his administration moved in, we've seen companies bend the knee to the administration saying, yeah, we're going to pull back on DEI. But Harvard, one of the oldest universities in our country, is saying, well, fuck you, we're not bending our knee. So Trump is like, well, I'll pull about $50 million from the budget that federally we give you. And Harvard is now kind of deciding, maybe, just maybe. And we're also going to look at tariff itself, right? I want to explain tariffs very briefly about how they work. And I want to go into, because of how the tariffs are, the Federal Reserve, federal bank has pretty much said that, hey, interest rate, like that number, inflation could go. If Trump keeps doing this BS about tariffs here, high tariffs here, 150% tariffs on China, yeah, the Fed share is like, hey, that inflation rate, interest rate is going to go tick up, right? Obviously, Trump is like, well, it's really the chair's fault. It's his problem. Nobody, it's your problem. Those are what we're going to talk about. We'll be right back after our intro. Let's go. Before we talk about pink tariffs. If you shop at Temu or Shein, yeah, even those are getting hit with tariffs. Take a listen or take a look or listen, whichever one. One of them.
We have some news right now. Temu and Shein are going to start raising their prices on April 25th because of Donald Trump's trade and tariffs policy. So previously, Temu and Shein were able to sell to American consumers extremely cheap because of a de minimis exemption within trade policy for any product sold under $800. Well, now that's going to go away, or at least it's going to be changed. And Temu and Shein have both informed their customers that their prices are going to go up starting in just about 9 or 10 days. And also, Temu and Shein have stopped or have reduced the amount of advertising they're doing on American social media platforms, American websites, and more. I know that's going to upset a lot of folks here on TikTok because all I see on my TikTok For You page are people trying on Shein clothing or using products from Temu. Well, now it's going to be a hell of a lot more expensive if you want to buy those products from China. I'll do a full breakdown on my Substack, so be sure to subscribe for free at the link in my bio and follow along to stay up to date on all the news you need to know about. I know I promised you this would be the last one would be my last video for the night, but this one is.
Thank you, Aaron from TikTok, for that amazing update. And that first off is pink tariffs. Have you ever heard about it? Neither have I. Apparently, there has been an increase on tariffs of women's clothing. That's correct. Women's clothing actually costs more than men's clothing. Let's get into the article. So President Donald Trump is using tariffs to disrupt nearly everything about the global trade order, except for a tariff policy that favors men over women. For decades, the U.S. tariff system has taxed women's clothing more heavily than men's clothing. Tariff on women's clothing are currently about 3% higher than men's, a policy that's known as pink tariffs, similar to pink tax that make the same products for women more expensive than men. This means that women pay an average $1 per garment compared to men, costs them more than $2 billion a year, according to research by Edward Reeser, Vice President and Director for Trade and Global Markets at the Progressive Policy Institute. With Trump imposing a 10% tariffs on most trading partners, with even higher levies for Canada, Mexico, and China, the cost for women could go even higher. As he is instituting massive tariffs, President Trump is missing a chance to tackle historically regressive and misogynistic traits of the global free trade system, and Steve Lamar, the president of American Apparel and Footwear, said. Most manufactured apparels and footwear are classified by gender in the United States Harmonized Tariff Schedule, so HTS, which sets out a tariff rate for all categories of merchandise imported into the United States. The tariff rate on women's clothing were on average 16.7 in 2022, 2.9 percentage points higher than the 13.6 average tariff rate for men's clothing, according to research. Breaking it down on individual items, women's suits in 2017, for example, were subject to a 15.1% tariff rate, while men's suits were subject to a 13.3 tariff. Women's underwear were hit with a 12.8 tariffs, while men's underwear were hit with an 8.6 tariffs. So during the 1930s and 40s, when America helped design the global free trading system, women's clothing production was a smaller industry, while men's clothing was a major source of employment and economic driver. U.S. textiles and apparel manufacturers at the time were more focused on lobbying for lower tariff and ending trade barriers on men's clothing, trade experts say. The current tariff gap is a relic of the old trade regime. Companies have attempted to end the gender bias in tariff rates. Steve Madden, Columbia Sportswear, and other companies sued the government in 2007 to strike down the tariff policy, but the suit failed because the courts ruled that tariff gaps were not designed to be discriminatory. There's also been little movement from the federal government to fix the policy, but this year, two Democratic lawmakers represent Lizzie Fletcher of Texas and Brittany Pedersen of Colorado introduced a legislation known as the Pink Tariff Study Act that would direct the Treasury Department and other agencies to examine the impact of tariffs on women and other consumer groups. Trump's tariff could unintentionally narrow the gender gap by raising the floor of tariffs on men's clothing. However, Lori Taylor, a professor at the Department of Public Service and Administration of Texas, who studies trade policy, but Trump's tariff will ultimately impact women more than men because women spend more money on average on clothing. In 2023, household spending on women's appeals averaged $655, compared to $406 for men's appeals, according to the Bureau of Labor Stats. My policy preference would have been lower tax for both men and women's clothing to reduce the gap. That's what Taylor said. But this is ultimately going to be hitting those low-income families. So I love Ross. Like, I am a huge fan. Like, I bought myself a gift card to Ross because that's how much money I spent at Ross. But this new tariff on women's clothing, especially for our lower income families, it's going to hit them pretty hard, especially if it's already hard for them to buy new clothing for themselves and even for their children. This is a pretty big blow. Trump's tariff will have an outsized impact on clothing because nearly all clothing sold in the United States is pretty much imported. Consumers immediately will face a 64% higher appeal prices when Trump's tariff, according to the Yale budget, actually go into effect. Tariff disparities aren't just between women and men. Tariffs will hurt lower income households and the goods they rely on more than wealthier households. That's because lower income consumers spend a greater share of their income on basic clothing and necessities than higher income consumers, especially those people who, get, influencer statuses, people who like companies will just send clothing to, versus some of us, lower people, middle class people, where we actually have to go out and go buy underwear now and again, or socks or shoes or shirts or whatever the case may be. That's why it's good. Shop at Goodwill. Just saying. Socks, underwear, t-shirts, and sneakers and other clothing basics have higher tariff rate than luxury items because tariffs vary by fabric content, said Shang Wu, a professor of fashion and appeal studies at University of Delaware. High-end fabrics such as wool, cashmere, slick have lower tariff rate than cotton, polyester, and nylon used in manufacture inexpensive clothing and sneakers. Prices for clothing basics will also rise more quickly than luxury items because Trump's tariff. We've seen over and over that people have come and outspoken about tariffs, that tariffs don't hurt the rich. They don't care. They're rich. They can spend it. Tariffs hurt the poor and the middle class people. We're the only ones who are going out daily spending money on stuff. And as multiple or hundreds of people have already said how tariffs work, when you have such a high tariff, that company, the American company that's here, they're not going to absorb 150% tariff. They're going to pass that down to us. They may absorb maybe 50%. The other 100 gets kicked down to us. I don't know a lot of companies that are going to sit here and be like, well, we'll absorb it all. Absolutely not. They have to make their profit. And if they do absorb it, that means the cost of other products that they sell are going to skyrocket, right? So let's use Disney for an example. If Disney decides to absorb that tariff, right, that means something in the Disney parks are going to go up, whether it's soda, soda's like $5 now, or the cost of a park ticket, or maybe their Genie Pass goes. There's so many different avenues or different products that they could raise, right? Especially when you talk about like wage increases. Wage increases don't come free. If they decide to give their employees a raise, that means they have to find out there's got to be some product or products that are going to get an increase because they have to pay a raise. You get it? Understand it? Good. Now, because we talk about pink tariffs, you know what they are. So now women's clothing is a lot more expensive than men. And I would assume that, I don't go out and buy clothing that much. When I do, but mainly like I look for a lot of discounted stuff, and you would never know where I got it from because, look, I make it look good. We are going to talk about Trent versus Harvard, one of the oldest schools here in the country. As we've learned since the Trump administration has taken over, there are either companies bending the knee, or even there are some schools who are bending the knee to this Trumpism. Pretty much, essentially, as I would say it, is that any school that is against the Trump administration, that's not, promoting his propaganda and is still supporting DEI, those are enemy number one. Harvard is definitely on that list. And I just think it's not for an administration to just these are just times of uncertainty. You're not going to know what this administration's going to do, whether it's going to go after schools. Like, it's already going after our immigrants. And now, parents don't want to send their child to school because they feel like they're going to be grabbed up. Like, people don't want to go outside or, do anything because they feel as though they're already a target. If you disagree with the administration and you're very vocal about it, depending on what your position is, you're going to fear for your life. Let's go into it. So, turn over here. Harvard University, such perfect foul for the Trumpism that it is a wonder it avoided the MAGA mainstream for so long. But the nation's oldest university is now head-to-head with the White House that sees few limits to its power, which wants to use these shatter elite pillars. Harvard President Alan Gerber decided not to bend to the administration demands to change its policies, declaring the university would not surrender its independence or its constitutional rights. A university more used to producing presidents that defied them thus set one of the most important clashes yet between President Donald Trump and the established institution. Those without an Ivy League prestige often mock the country's most prestige seats of learning, though degrees often elite circles off limits to most Americans. And when Trump portrays the esteemed academics of Cambridge, Massachusetts, a far left activist pushing woke policies on race and gender, he's not working in a vacuum. Many of Americans agree with him, polls showing recent distrust in higher education institutions, especially among Republicans. Well, we know Republicans don't care for education. They don't want you to get a higher education because they want you to stay as stupid as possible so you don't understand what the hell they're doing. That's why Republicans don't want you to have an education. But Trump's assault on the country's top colleges goes beyond an issue that will execute his political base. Administration heats up on top universities as part of a broader effort to challenge centers of what it regards as liberal power, which also includes the courts, federal bureaucracies, and the media. After remaking the Republican Party in the Supreme Court, Trump hopes to extend his populist ideology to higher education as a way to challenge belief systems that conflict with his MAGA creed and to shift the country hard to the right. Trump is not the only taking a top academics, and surveys show that their left-leaning facilities. His immigration crackdowns have stirred a culture of fear on campuses. Some students have been taken off the street by border agents, while hundreds more have had their visas canceled on the grounds that their views are damaging to the American foreign policy interests. That sense of oppression threatens to strike the atmosphere of open debate that animates a healthy university, and Trump's threat to halt funding to top schools endangers the country's world-leading scientists and medical research into killer disease such as cancer and Alzheimer's. So they're going further because first they said it was like anti-Semitism, but now it's kind of going a lot more deeper into that. So this was driven home in December 2023 when New York Rep. Elise shrived the presidents of top universities over campus protests that critics say degeneralized into anti-Semitism following the Hamas attack on Israel. Academic Newson's answers might have passed muster into a campus seminar, but they turned into a political catosphere. The moral outrage, the Harvard graduate helped lead the resignation of the university's president, Claudine Gay. The New York lawmaker's performance also made her one of the fastest rising stars in the MAGA movement and the House GOP leadership. Stefanik led the charge against Harvard again on Tuesday after the administration froze $2.2 billion in federal funds when the university refused its demands. If you look at the facility, the tenured faculty of all these schools, they are so out of touch with American values. 97% of the facility are self-identified as Democrat, progressive, and they are propping up the radical far left ideas and really teaching anti-Americanism. What is anti-Americanism? Is that a thing? I didn't know universities taught that. Is that something that they teach? Anti-Americanism. I think this lady's just making up words at this point. Let's keep going. The administration has used anti-Semitism charges to fuel both its wider assault on the universities and its mass deportation drives. It demands that Harvard commission an outside party to audit multiple programs, schools, and departments within the university that it said were tainted by egregious records of anti-Semitism in other bases. But its stunning list of demands doesn't end there. It's called for an end to all diversity, equity, inclusion programs, including reduction in power of the faculty, ending any hiring based off race, gender, or sex, and new crackdowns on student protests and student groups and clubs, including those that support Pakistan's sovereignty, a long-time, if lapsed, U.S. government policy. The White House demands investigations into past campus protests, sit-ins that took place on the aftermath of Hamas attacks on Israel. These are demands of the White House, right? The wish list represented an unusual attempt by the presidential administration to exert power over the independent university. The showdown, which follows agreements by other universities, including Columbia, to cede similar pressure, is almost certain to land in court. But Lawrence Summers, the former Treasury Secretary and president of Harvard, told CNN that the university should not comply with government that is being extra lawful, he added. Universities are in need of a great deal of reform, and it's come too slowly, but that's not a reason why the government can entirely suspend the law and make up self-serving political demands and impose them on university. Trump may believe he's onto a political winner, whatever happens. When universities cave, fearful of losing billions of dollars in public funding, his power is enhanced. And he can pile on even more pressure when they defend themselves. They give him a fight he's happy to wage. And when Democrats criticize him, they take the side of what millions of Americans believe are elitist establishment figures who are disliked by much of the country. Disdain for top universities run deep in the MAGA movement, perhaps mostly among Ivy Leagues like Stefanik and Vice President J.D. Vance, who often appear to be seeking to atone to their base for their elite educations. These populist backlash against establishment institutions is the root of the MAGA movement and the America First conservatism, along with the belief that liberal facilities are responsible for propagating a belief system that is anti-American. For instance, at the National Conservatism Conference in 2021, Vance, a Yale Law graduate, advocate a campaign against very hostile institutions, added, if any of us want to do the things we want to do for our country and people who live in it, we have to honestly and aggressively attack the universities in this country. On a campaign trail last year, Trump lambasted universities he claimed were packed with Maximus maniacs, and the president's movement has long fostered suspicions of academic intelligentism and distrust of the highly educated, which was elaborated by his text on the experts during the COVID-19 pandemic in his first term, and which now shows in his orthodox second term cabinet. The highly polarized approach leaves little doubt that the administration motives to go beyond eradicating anti-Semitism from college campuses. Its transparent effect to change what is taught, what we say in our classrooms, what we teach our students, to make sure that the only things that are actually said on university campuses are things that the Trump administration wants to hear and wants to be said. Andrew Manuel, a Harvard law professor, told CNN on Kate Collins' show. So let's just take a break there. University are the foundation of it's just the foundation. It's where you go to learn different things. It's not for administration to say that you're anti-American because you're taking, maybe, let's say that you're taking a feminist class, right? That's in a MAGA book. No, you shouldn't be taking it. That's probably left-leaning. So they want these universities to bend their knee and curb programs that have DEI in them, or curb the faculty from having so much power. And it's like the article says, if these universities bend the knee, that's just giving him more power. It enhances his power so much because he's like, well, if they bend the knee, this place is going to bend the knee. And honestly, the power really lies with the universities that don't bend, right? Some of those other universities did bend the knee because maybe that funding is a lot for them, right? But if you're already an Ivy League school that's, $2 billion, yeah, that's a pretty good chunk. But your Harvard is essentially like a focal point. You have these companies that are standing up, like Costco, and now you have Harvard. It's like these institutions that are standing up, these are true American institutions because we don't bend a knee to a administration. That's not what America is. We don't bend a knee to a king or a tyrant or a dictator. We don't bend a knee to anyone for that matter. You may not like what a university is teaching, but that does not give you the right to sit there and be like, well, we're going to take away funding because you're not doing that. Because like we've seen before, what if Obama did that? Or what if Biden did that? Y'all would be shopping at the White House because they did something like that. It's about time you people start standing up. No one should have to bend it. Universities are an open, inclusive place for you to be who you want to be, learn what you want to be, and grow from that. But if we have these colleges, these universities sitting here bending knee to a tyrant, we're no longer America. It's no longer freedom. It's either Trump or deportation. We have to do something. Standing up, going out, spreading the word. If there's things you don't like, speak up about what you don't like. But to have an administration sit here and dictate what we can, what we can't say, having your own fellow students scared to even come on campus. God, if there's even a protest, it's that not standing up to the administration, that is anti-American. Let's keep going. So there is fear on these college campuses, as I previously stated. So the administration's heavily hand immigration enforcement has also fueled a response atmosphere or repressive atmosphere on campus following the detention of several students who took part in the campus protests against Israel, and some who did not. The Trump administration last week won a deportation order from a Louisiana immigration judge against Columbia University graduate Mahad Ali, a legal permanent resident. He was accused of undermining the U.S. policy to combat anti-Semitism, but the government cited no allegations of criminal activity. Khalil who is married to a U.S. citizen, is a prominent Pakistani advocate who played a critical role in protests against Israel war in Gaza on campus last year. Many within the administration have long been prominent of the notion of make it bad enough that people will self-deport, save us the efforts and the money. And you see that though these actions were underlying message is, if you don't self-deport, these are the consequences. The targeting of universities may also stifle the free-willing essence of American higher education, according to Jamal, executive director of the First Amendment Institute of Columbia University. People come from all over the world to study at American universities, in part because there are other people from all around the world there. You get to hear from people with extremely different experiences, life experiences, perspectives, and political views, religious views. You know that that's what makes American universities great, Jaffer told CNN in an interview on her podcast called The Assignment. But if the non-citizens are intimidated from speaking out or participating in public discourse, that has a cost not just to them, but to the rest of us. I don't know where we need to go from here. My idea is that we just need to speak up more. We need to follow local elections and make sure that the right people get elected into the right position. This administration gets more powerful the more people bend the knee to it. And now the administration is also trying to ask the Supreme Court that federal judges shouldn't be able to put a pause on his orders. They should not even be able to say anything, which goes to the fact of we have the wheel of checks and balances. And some of you who are out there saying, these governments have too much power. Well, you're looking at one of the biggest power. Federal government now of this administration is probably the powerful that we've ever had. And any Republican government or state government, they're just imbued more. The more the Trump administration gets powerful, the more who align with him become even more bolden to take actions they normally would be taking. So when we come back, we'll look at your interest rates going up because of Trump's tariffs being like, yeah, there's tariffs, they're not tariff, they're not 90-day, 30-day. The nigga doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. We'll be right back. So since the Trump administration has come into power, they are always pressuring the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates, which we know that's not how it works. Federal Reserve looks at the economy, takes a number of things into effect before they lower it. But because there are so many other institutions that are bending their knee to the Trump administration, Trump now believes he has enough power to go after the federal chair to replace the current person, put someone else in there. But is that really how it works? Could he do that? Let's go into it. So the Federal Reserve was set up by Congress in 1913 as an independent body to isolate itself from political pressures that the president is imposing. Its mission is to secure stable prices and employment, a mission that sometimes puts it at odds with the short-term needs of lawmakers and presidents. If Trump were to acquire the power to manipulate interest rates at will through a proxy, Fed chair, or otherwise, he sparked a confusion on the financial markets, buckle confidence in the United States economy, and almost certainly spike inflation. And it would be a further sign that America's global reputation as a rock of financial stability is quickly eroding in his second term. Potential market turmoil following wild drops and swings in the share prices since Trump launched his tariff war this month may be one factor in persuading Trump to leave Powell in place. The Wall Street Journal reported on Thursday that the president has talked about firing Powell, but the senior officials, including the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, have so far talked him out of it. It is greatly accepted in Washington that the president lacks power to dismiss board members overseeing independent agencies without cause. The administration is hoping the Supreme Court will overturn a 1935 legal precedent in which such assumptions were based. Trump growing contempt for sound governance in its courts and his consent efforts to expand presidential power on questionable terms means that Powell's future is not certain. This is a White House that acts first and deals with the consequences of potential legality later. But there's a chance that the president is just venting. After all, he repeatedly complained about Powell's caution during his first term. Forbes reported that last year that he ordered Wilbur Ross to tell the Fed chair and order him to lower rates, citing the former Commerce Secretary a memoir. But Trump has also never been so unconstrained. In his new administration, he's picked officials who are loath to temper his wildest instincts. Bassett is seen as a moderator influence. Earlier this week, he told Bloomberg that the monetary policy is a jewel box that's got to be preserved. But the Treasury Secretary lacks significant political experience, and history shows that any subordinate who seeks to reign in the president could soon find themselves fired. You don't agree with them, you're out the door. Uncertainty over Powell's future comes with the economy reeling from successive shocks over Trump's tariff policy, especially the 145% duties imposed on Chinese imports. The impact of his hardline approach could soon hit in the form of high prices and shortage of key consumer goods and other items. While Trump has frozen these tariffs on dozens of countries and says multiple governments are offering trade deals, remains unclear whether he'll be able to deliver on his goal of bringing back manufacturing and jobs in the short term. Consumer confidence has maintained while tumbling, and companies are struggling to set expectations and budgets for the year ahead, raising more fears that the economy could soon slip into recession. Even if Trump doesn't try to dismiss Powell, but simply continues to talk about doing so, he could rattle investors' confidence. This is why most presidents understand interest rate policy. As infuriating as it may often be, it's best left as an independent side. Now, the economy is already going down the drain. We could hit a recession probably by the end of the year, probably by the end of the summer. In the second term, as it said, he's hiring people who loathe him, or I wouldn't even say love him, and who are at his beck and call to do whatever he wants them to do. That's just how it is. That's how he's made his second term. He's not picking people who are actually sound-minded, who are going to go by the Constitution. He's going to pick people who are going to go with him over the Constitution. And for all of you, and I'm going to say it again, for all of you who voted, who thought the economy was bad under Biden, who thought that the economy was bad, now it's worse. So we'll see what happens from here. When we come back, we're just going to take a short break because we're already about maybe 45 minutes into the podcast. I'll tell you where we're going to go from here and how you can support the channel as we do our own little project. Be right back. At this point, I'm going to take this off first. At this point, I don't know where America goes from here. The only thing I can say right now is that for all of us who are still open-minded, are understanding the consequences and the impact the administration is currently having, all we can do is keep speaking out. And I know even that is so dangerous. Like the freedom of speech doesn't exist because in a MAGA administration and he has control of the House, it essentially puts us in a place where we can't say anything, but you can't, that's anti-American. You have to understand that the Constitution is always going to be there. The only people who can put this administration in their place is going to be people like you who are fighting every day to make sure that people know this is not what we voted for. Hell, I did not vote for him. I told you who I was voting for. And some of you guys still went off and voted for this man thinking that he was going to make your life amazing. Gas prices are still high. Egg prices are still high. Grocery. Hell, things now that we're getting from China or Temu or Shein, whatever. It's making it so much harder. All because he believes that it's going to bring jobs back to America when companies and even people who study this say that that would take years to do and would cost millions and millions of dollars to do that. Not something so easy to pick up Apple and be like, we're going to take it from China and bring it over to America. Because even Apple said that the iPhone would be almost 3 times the amount that it is now if they brought factories over here to America. My call to action for you is to stand up for what's right and fight for our rights that we have. Don't bend the knee to a tyrant or wannabe king. Don't bend your knee to this administration. That's why we have all these federal judges being like, nope, that's unconstitutional. You can't do that. We have a checks and balances for a reason. But the more that people keep bending the knee, the more people who keep giving in, all it's doing is enhancing his power about what he can. We haven't even reached a year with this administration, and already we're seeing just chaos. We're seeing mass deportations. We're seeing just turmoil, essentially, from here. But I digress. What I really wanted to tell you is make sure you take care of your mental health. I've stepped away from doing podcasts just because it takes a toll on you. It truly does. And I've started 3D printing. I'm in the era of starting my own 3D business. I wanted something to just take my mind off it. As most of you guys know, I've been doing this for years. I'm even still getting my bachelor's and associates in political science because I believe there's change there. I believe that I can actually do that change and joining and running for these political offices. But I also have to take care of my mental health. There's no way in hell I'm going to let this administration bamboozle me. Absolutely. If you do want to support the 3D business, I'm going to leave the YouTube link below. Go ahead and watch the video. As I do my journey of starting a 3D business, I document it, and for other people who want to start that journey, we're all learning together. That way you can see what I'm doing when I'm not talking about politics. I'm always still keeping up with politics. I'm just not doing these episodes as weekly as I normally do. Now they come either 2 weeks to almost a month. I think my last episode was like 3 months ago. So I'll edit this one, get it out to you guys so you guys can listen to it. Put reels on TikTok. That's where you can follow us. You can follow us on TikTok or follow us on Instagram, where I am usually posting on TikTok. Until then, I want to thank my loyal fan base who are always listening to these episodes and sharing them with friends and family, and for all the new ones who come in and listen to it as well. Please make sure you take care of your mental health and just take care of you. Understanding that go out there, live your life as free as you can, and speak out when you see injustice. Have an open mind. Understanding all points of view. There's going to be different religions, different perspectives. Understand them and make a valid. Understand there's going to be issues that we're not going to be able to solve right now. There are going to be issues that we are going to need to have multiple conversations in order to come to some type of equal footing. Understand that. Understand that in this economy, it is best to support your small businesses because they're actually hurting the most. Understanding that you have a voice, and you can make a change. So, with that being said, be safe. I love you. And may God bless you because, whew, man, challenging times. Thanks for listening to The Last Conversation. We'll see you in our next episode. Bye for now.